On to Councillor Heney's motion, number 13.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. And this motion was adjourned from the last meeting, I think, of the Strategic Policy Committee. I just want to say that the reason that I've put this motion onto the agenda in the first instance is from an animal welfare point of view, and it's following the successful prosecution of an individual for really not paying attention to the animal welfare issues surrounding his animal, and he was prosecuted successfully and told that he couldn't own a horse for a number of years following that prosecution. Now, I know, Chair, that Kevin Mead has advised of a lacuna in the law, and since the last SPC, the Chief Executive gave us all a report explaining the difficulties around the Local Government Act 2001, where we had drawn up our draft bylaws, or where Kevin and this SPC had drawn up the draft bylaws. It seems now that there's a difficulty there in terms of whether or not we could or could not have those bylaws drafted up in the first instance, because there's some Victorian acts that have not been repealed, which brings us to the situation that we're at today, where the Minister is being asked, or the Department is being asked by the City Council to review the matter, and it may involve either amending or repealing one or both parts of one or both acts. But just to I suppose ask this committee, and I know I'm not a member of the committee, Chair, but just to ask the committee that maybe we could try and put some kind of further pressure on the Minister to take this matter seriously, because it's about animal welfare in our city. And I'd like to say at the outset, Chair, that I'm advocating on behalf of myself in the first instance, but on behalf of My Lovely Horse Rescue, and indeed members of the public who are very concerned that people who own animals in our city are made accountable and make sure that the welfare of animals is taken seriously. I know maybe Kevin or the manager might have some kind of a report for us, but I would like to, I suppose, reiterate my concern that this City Council and this Strategic Policy Committee would try and put pressure on the Minister to make sure that this matter is attended to fairly quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. Anyone else wish to speak on it? Just very briefly from my own part, I've been tic-tacking a bit with, I think, Aoife from My Lovely Horse Rescue, and what seems to be coming out is that we are under-resourced and suffering from a lack of meaningful legislation to control horses in the city. I think the amount of horse licences in the city could be almost measured on one hand, which begs the question as to whether we have a lot of unregulated horses, which I think we do, and it is proving really challenging to monitor the conditions under which these horses are ridden, the issue of underage riders, the issue of horses in poor condition. And it seems to be left up to the guards, for the most part, to try and deal with this. And they're under-resourced as well. So I think the motion is a good one, and I fully support it. So I'm not sure if the manager has an update on this.
I suppose just a very brief one, just to say that myself and Kevin are actually meeting the department tomorrow.
Thanks, Manager.
That's great. That's much appreciated, Manager and Councillor, for that. That brings us on to the next motion, item 14. Paddy, you've been waiting quite a while for this to come up. So, motion in the name of Councillor Paddy Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, our continental cousins have made the I suppose controversial decision to give, busy residential streets back to the residents, back to their children. And in a lot of these designs, the private motor car and motorised vehicles in general are treated as guests, and they have to behave like guests and give priority to cyclists, give priority to pedestrians, give priority to children playing on the streets like they used to in this city. So I think we need to look at this for a lot of our residential streets in the city, and just I suppose we need to be able to. I presume we can't do it with our own bylaws, so I'd be just interested to know what the manager thinks we need vis-a-vis the changes to the Road Traffic Act to allow us to introduce something like a Vuner for Spielstraße, the living streets that exist in other continental cities. Thanks.
Thanks. Fiona Kelty and then Councillor McGinley.
I would just like to, with permission, to circulate the Hume report, which recently came out in the UK about shared space. They've been playing around with this kind of scheme in the UK for quite some time, and the feedback that's coming back now after some years is pretty negative. I would love to see more pedestrian priority, but when it relies on eye contact and when it relies on driver behaviour being courteous, I'm sorry, I prefer laws and I prefer lights and clear signage as to who's got right of way and who hasn't. And, you know, education is a huge part of it. The underlying idea is great. You're trying to make cities places to live in rather than places to drive through at speed. So obviously we're all in favour of that. But the problem is how it's gone about. And I think we do need, the NDA should really be producing guidelines on that, to be fair. They did commission research into it. Trinity House did the research for them. That was quite some time ago. No guidelines yet for anybody to try, and anybody who's trying to do this in a way that is good, you know, for everybody. So without the guidelines, mistakes are being made when people bring it in, and then there's going to be objections, there's going to be problems. So, you know, really before it goes through, let's get it sorted in the line of, you know, I think the NDA should really be the ones to be looking into that and working with national and local authorities about it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona. Councillor McKinley.
Well, I'm not too sure that this scheme is suitable for wide application. I mean, I think you need a very specific set of circumstances where you would even look at this. I mean, the reality is that vehicles are important for people, whether those vehicles are cars, whether they're motorbikes, whether they're bikes, and you know. So, to be honest with you, I don't think it's practical. You know, we've had issues. I'm not saying there could be situations, there could be certain streets, and certainly if residents wanted to opt in, it would be an option. So I'm not opposed to that, but I really would caution. I don't think it's suitable for general application, would be my personal opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Essentially, I wouldn't disagree with the motion, but I prefer to apply the motion and get the motion working that was agreed to at the last Transport SPC, and that was the name Patrick Costello, a car-free zone area around schools. Now, if that could work effectively, well, then you can transfer it onto other areas. But I would like to see something like the motion that was passed at the last Transport meeting by Councillor Costello for a car-free zone area. And there was a number of examples given that it could have been operated. And one was particular All Saints Drive in Raheny. It'd be an ideal place to operate it and to try it. So I prefer to go with that option first and see it operating. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly from my own part, I think it's a step in the right direction, but I'm very conscious of the issues raised by Fiona Kelty and by quite a few campaigners for people who are partially sighted who have raised concerns about shared space, particularly when vehicles perhaps feel they own the road, and perhaps we need changes in the legislation to ensure that they don't. And I've asked my colleagues in the Oireachtas to table a few questions on this, and I do think we need revisions in the guidance. Maybe the NDA is the appropriate semi-state organisation to carry that out. The work from Trinity House was very useful, but I'm conscious a few of our public domain schemes have fallen recently on the basis of concerns about shared space. But I think there is a way forward on this. We essentially want to make sure that more vulnerable road users are protected and that they are given their fair share of road space. So I'm happy to vote for the motion on the basis that it might help us move towards better guidance. Manager, perhaps I'd bring you in if there's no other speakers from.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You know, yes, we're you know, obviously aware of the various different concerns that have been expressed, particularly in the UK, on shared space schemes. And you know, I think the Living Street scheme is you know, a good concept, as you say, for particular locations. However, I think there probably does need to be some legislative change, because the basic thrust of it is that the car doesn't have the right of way, or the vehicle does not have the right of way, and that's kind of something that needs to be, I think, looked at through legislation. Because obviously, if we have if we have a road, there are some issues around that as it currently stands, and I'm not 100% sure that as it stands at the moment we would have or we would be able to put in place a robust scheme, or a scheme where that there's clarity about it. And I think it's clarity about these schemes that need to be, that is the main element. So we're quite happy to implement it if there is clarity on it. I think there is I think the actual basic motion to look for the Minister of Transport to amend it. I think there are some issues around what exactly we're looking for in an amendment, but it is that essential item where it's that one mode doesn't have any dominance legally, I suppose, is the issue.
Councillor McKinley.
Just one particular point it highlights. I mean, the word that's often unsaid but that comes before road is public road. Because I've been at quite a number of different residents' meetings, and most people have that clear understanding. Some people don't. Some people think they can commandeer the public road for private use, which clearly as a local authority we can't allow to happen. So, but it's clarity on that issue. What circumstances does a road not become a public road in the commonly understood usage of that term? And there could be such situations, but you need to be crystal clear, because there is an underlying public good in the roads being public, which goes back, a considerable period of time. Now, and I appreciate, living in environments in certain situations, if everybody's on board, and there could be situations where it is suitable. I think they would be a minority, but nonetheless they could be real and exist. So it's how you monitor that. I think there are other countries who are further down the road, but I think that's the key question. People need to be clear about the term public road. Thank you.
All right, shall we formally agree the motion? Happy to do so. We then have a motion in the name of Councillor Costello. I suggest we defer this. And that leaves us finishing the agenda before 5:30, which I think is... Oh no, we've one more. Ray, I'm very sorry. Motion, item 16, in the name of Councillor Ray McHugh.
Thanks, Chair, and I'll be very quick. This was a motion. I brought it to our area committee, and it was passed. The reason I raised it really was a constituent of mine was very unlucky. Twice over a space of 2 weeks, couriers banged into her car and caused damage. Now they were gone as quickly as it happened. What the motion is calling for, if it's possible to introduce laws to compel cycle couriers operating commercially to have some type of identification. And the thing I was thinking of was a high-vis jacket with a registration number on the back. That's a simple thing that would address this problem, because they're in and out of tax, like they're working to time because they get paid on each delivery, so they're working to time. And most of them would be students and they need a few bob. I'm not against that. Some of the companies have them insured, some haven't. So the issue really is just to be able to identify, if somebody bangs into your car, that you're actually able to identify them, because they're moving so fast through traffic, especially in town. They're in and out of traffic, and you can't blame them. They're trying to earn a few bob. I'm not against that. It's just to be able to identify who they are and ring up and be able to claim the damage that's actually caused to the car. So I'd look for you to support this. Thank you.
Martin.
Yeah, I would support that motion, especially for pedestrians as well. So for pedestrians hit by one of these cyclists, that they will be able to identify back not only just to the company but also to the individual who caused the incident.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement. We'd like to see something happen in this area, so the motion is agreed. And I still think we've hit a record of getting through the agenda before 5:30. So can I thank you members for your brevity and persistence in staying with us, and thank the manager and his staff as well. Thank you very much.